Thank you, guys. We're going to start. I know that we're a bit late, but we had the honor of having the French president visiting our African startups. So today is now the last panel of the day about fintech in Africa. So I'm going to call on stage my moderator, Stéphanie Lédier of IFC. Welcome, Stéphanie. And I will let you call your startups and speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'd like to introduce our two panelists today. First is Aurélien from Bizao. Aurélien, if you can come on the stage.
We can clap for him, guys. Come on. Come on. I'm not hearing any clapping. Thank you.
And then the second one is Henri from Curacell. Thanks, Henri, to join this panel.
Why did you take your badge off?
Can you hear us well, guys? Okay.
Yeah. We're doing that?
So, everybody, my name is Stéphanie. I'm leading our fintech investment in Africa. As you know, fintech is very big for Africa. We have a dedicated team. We are about 20 people globally. We have invested in 70 companies just in fintech, and we have exited a few of them. Just to throw you some names that might be familiar to you in Africa, we invested in Wave, which is active in West Africa. We have invested in Terapay, which is helping remittance company to aggregate the termination of their payments in many places in Africa. We have invested in Adumo, which is a merchant acquirer in South Africa, and Lulaland, which is also doing some SME lending, and in Fauri, which is a unicorn in Egypt that many of you might know. They started, as an agent network doing airtime top-up, and then they transitioned to merchant acquiring, and they have their own app. We exited about 20 companies, and we have invested about $500 million just in that sector. IFC took the decision to invest directly. So we are not going through any funds. We are an investor in a lot of funds, but on that specific sector, we decided to go direct and build our own expertise. So I'll stop here because it's not to talk about IFC. This is to talk about Bizao and Curacell. So just to give you some background, as you might know, this is the second time we do this VIVATECH event. We have invited many companies to apply and present their business plan, their strategy, what kind of pain points they want to resolve. And we had quite a few, not a few, we have many applications for the fintech sector. And we shortlisted 15 companies. And out of these 15, Curacell and Bizao are the two finalists. We have a third one called Asante, but unfortunately the founder was not able to join us. So thanks a lot, guys. Kudos, because it was quite a competitive process. We have dozens of people in the jury, so I mean, it sounds maybe easy, but it was quite competitive because we receive a lot of high-quality application. So just to start this panel, I'd like Aurélien or Henri, I mean, whomever wants to start, just to give us a sense what your company is doing, and maybe you start what kind of pain points you're trying, I mean, what kind of issues you've seen, and what Bizao is doing, and just give us an overview and even the stage of where you are. And then we'll transition to Henri.
Okay, thanks, Stéphanie. Thank you for organization, the invitation, and everything. Super happy to be here with my colleagues from Africa also who were able to join. So Bizao, I will tell you the story. Basically, it started almost here. I think 5 years ago, something like that. I was sitting at Orange booth over there. I was Orange manager for Africa for innovation. And I was meeting so many startups trying to work with Orange and to get Orange money as a payment option. And I was like, okay, maybe I can do something to help. And I started as an entrepreneur. So maybe you don't know that, but it's when you start your own startup inside a big company, a corporate. And I had a booth here, I think 4 years ago, Bizao also, but it wasn't my company. I was just an employee from Orange. And then I managed to move out from Orange and raise money and build my own team. And here we are back, super happy, with a company which is now based in 10 countries, and we have built a payment infrastructure for Africa. Currently, it's mostly Francophone Africa, because for a French guy it's easier, but of course we intend to go much further and to cover the whole continent. We have now 78 employees, so from the original idea back at the Orange booth, it's a good journey. We are super happy. And basically, today even we had President Macron 10 minutes ago coming to our booth, so it's like...
Did you get your picture?
Yeah, I got a picture and a
We should put
discussion
it-
and everything, so you know, it's good. We're happy. It's not the end goal, but it's always nice. And yeah, we want to build something even much bigger, so to help local companies and international companies accept payment methods in all Africa. Because currently you have 54 countries, it's super complex, it's fragmented. In each country you have 4 payment methods at least. It's a nightmare. So we make it much smoother now, and we continue to go bigger. So our customers are, I don't know, like merchants, traditional merchants in retail or e-commerce, but it's energy, utilities, banks, and so on. So we've raised, I think, 9 million euros so far, and we'll keep on raising and growing if people continue to help us like that.
Andre?
For sure, they will. Come on. Yeah, so I'm Henry Mascot. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Curacao. Unfortunately, I don't have a sexy story from working as an entrepreneur. But what we do, so maybe I'll start with our why. For us, I am Nigerian. And, you know, unfortunately, I think we're the poverty capital of the world these days. So for our why is, you know, as a company is to help, you know, drive economic prosperity, help get people, you know, in the right place economically. And insurance for us is a very important stack in that process. Just the same way you have credit, and you know, an example is nobody here buys a house cash, right? That's what we do in Nigeria. You have to buy a house cash, or you know, buy a car cash, right? So same way, right? You know, most people here barely pay for their healthcare expenses out of pocket. When you get sick, you go to a hospital, you get taken care of. Insurance takes care of that. But for 99% of Africans, to some extent, it's out of pocket. So for us, we think insurance is a very important stack for people to become prosperous, to become viable. And as a business, our own part to play in that is to build the infrastructure that drives that insurance. So what that means practically is that we deploy technologies across the value chain, from distribution to claims, fraud detection, payments, to allow insurance companies be more efficient and allow insurance work on the continent. We're still a seed-stage company, around 3 to 4 years old as well. We've raised much lower than him, about 3.5 million. But we also have a footprint in about 8 markets. Nigeria, you know, is our main market, which is where I am from, which is where we started. We've also scaled into East Africa, Francophone, and recently North Africa. Our most sexiest product is a product that allows any business, fintech, telco, bank, embed insurance into their existing product. I'll stop there.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Henry, you're very modest because you raise less money than Aurélien, but you have marquee names in your cap table, so you can mention that.
Yeah, so, you know, we've been lucky, you know, call it luck, yeah? We've been lucky to have, you know, investors like Y Combinator, Tencent, and Google on the cap table.
So that's already very impressive in itself. So you guys are in very different sector. I mean, same continent, but different sector, more on the payment side as a core business for you, Aurélien, and you, Henry, you're more on the insurtech side. So can you share a bit with us, you know, any kind of difficulties, challenges, more on the macro or regulatory side? Because I think fintech is a highly regulated business to start with compared to many businesses. So the good thing of that is you have some barrier to entries. The bad thing of that is that you need some licenses and there are some limitation, and because of what you do, it's highly controlled. So just through your experience and your journey, any key challenges that you face that could be relevant for many companies in that sector, in your respective sector?
Sure, there are some challenges. I mean, they are a lot smaller than the opportunities, but we need to address them. The regulation is tied to the map of Africa. So you have 54 countries, and you don't have 54 regulations, but almost. So if you want to have like a decent market size, you need to cover many countries, and if you do that, then you are faced with different regulation. So you need to have a license. So typically we're applying for license in DRC and in CIMAC region, which is Central Africa. But luckily we didn't have to get a license for WEMU region, which is Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, and all the neighboring countries. So that was a good actually thing because it helps us innovate, and then we are applying for a license. Whether in Nigeria, it's more mature for fintechs, but there's heavy regulation, and there's a lot of barriers to enter the market. So I guess the biggest difficulty for us, and Henry, you're experiencing the same, is when we try to scale, we face different regulations everywhere, and sometimes it slows us down because, okay, I want to go to Morocco, I want to go to Tunisia, I want to go to Algeria, I want to go to Egypt. Each time it's like a headache. So it's like that. I mean, payment, of course, needs to be regulated. That's very important. Otherwise, it gets to money laundering in 10 minutes. So we're super cautious about compliance at Bizao because I was sort of born at Orange, and they were like completely crazy about compliance. So that's in our DNA, but still, we also have to work with merchants who are like informal merchants, and those guys have few KYC papers. And so how do you address millions of small merchants when you need to fall down into the high level of compliance that is required? I think that's a challenge that central banks need to address, because otherwise, right now we're a bit stuck in addressing high-level market like big corporates, but then everybody else is difficult. So we have conversations with central banks and ministers, but it's going to take a bit of time, at least in the countries where we operate.
Yeah, so I guess while we're on the topic of regulation, so again, I'll build on top of what he said. It's definitely the hardest nut to crack when you look at scaling across Africa. It's regulation, and I use an example. There's a company who does something similar to what we do in Europe. It's called Cover. I think at Belgium to some extent. Yeah. So I remember I met him in one event a couple of months ago, and I was like, "Hey, dude, how did you guys get all your licenses in all your 20, 30 markets?" And he was like, "One license." Right. So I guess that's building on what Aurelian has said. It's the same thing for us. We're in markets, we're licensed in one, and we partner with people, but obviously that drops our revenue. At scale, we need to get our own licenses. In the US, you do have to get 52 or 50 licenses, but it's not as opaque and as difficult. There are markets that we're in now that it's absolutely not an option. I will not mention names. You would not get a license, right? The people who got the license got it like 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and that's it. It's locked. So I'd say for us as well, from a regulatory, standpoint, it would be licensing. What can be made to make it easier? I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel because of AFCTA. Of course, that has to do a lot with trade and but I assume that eventually that would get us to some middle place where there can be some standardization, even if it's not one license across the continent like some Europeans have, maybe some transparency and process and overseeing body that makes it easier.
Do you think it's slowing down your growth, your market expansion, to both of you? And again, it depends country by country. You cannot...
No, honestly, no. Because there's two ways of growing. It's either you span across a lot of markets, and for that, yes, it will slow down your your process because you have to get the license everywhere. But at the same point, when you are entering a market, the objective is to grow the market share in the country. And for that, I mean, right now, typically, Bizao covers like, let's say, 200 million customers in 10 markets. We can stay like that if we want to, for the next 5 years and grow like crazy without trying to apply for a license in new countries. I think we'll do both because we're crazy, but we could just stay where we are.
So only for you, you know, I traveled a lot to Nigeria, and any Nigerian company wants to go outside Nigeria, while you guys have a massive market. So what's going on there?
Why? Actually, there's a bit of news, right? So in Nigeria we have this, we have this big foreign exchange problem.
It's going to be resolved, no? Based
Yeah.
on
So luckily, it was one of the challenges that I would have talked about in the panel. So a lot of Nigerian companies try to diversify because of the crazy FX. You put in money, the money, inflation, and so on and so forth. But I think today we had good news, good or bad news. So for us as a business, obviously the way to de-risk is make sure that you are across multiple markets. I think just right about 40 or 50% of our revenue is Nigerian right now. So we are diversified to some extent. But I think our problem is being solved. The Naira is now on a float, so it means things would get much, much better.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So, guys, if we discuss a bit the evolution of your sector, I mean, I'll start with you, Aurélien, if that's fine. I mean, how do you see, the payment landscape in Africa has nothing to do with what we see in Europe or even in Asia that I used to know very well. Can you give us a sense? I assume many people here knows what the payment landscape looks like in Africa, but just a sense what it looks like and how do you see the evolution and then the opportunity for you and many players? Because if we look at the tech sector, fintech is half of the fintech investment. The fintech investment is half of the money going to Africa on a consistent basis. So share a bit with us how you see the sector, the payment evolving and the opportunity.
Yeah, I think the market is always right. So if they are pouring 50% of the money in fintech, it's because there's massive opportunities and stuff to do. There are 90% of all the transactions are still based in cash, which is slowing down the whole economy. When you're a merchant and you sell everything with cash, you need to meet physically with the customer, and you need to basically manage cash issues, and that are security and lack of change and everything. So the whole system needs to change, and it started at least 10 to 15 years ago, I think in Kenya, with mobile money, which was the hotbed of the whole revolution that is now happening everywhere. And we've seen mobile money growing, and I was sitting at Orange, and that's partly why I created Bizao, because I saw this, GSMA figures, growing like crazy. And now it's even bigger. I think we topped 800 million mobile money wallets last year in sub-Saharan Africa. 800 million. Soon it's going to be 1 billion. And I guess 90% of the population in the business in Europe doesn't know that, by the way. So the puzzle that is basically payment in Africa starts to be something that we can solve, because it's no longer just cash-based. People are moving massively to mobile money. We just need to put the infrastructure layer that puts everyone together and make it accessible to any kind of companies, whether it's local or international. But that's a big transformation. You haven't seen that happening in Europe, in Asia, or in LATAM.
Question on that, because you come from Orange, Aurélien. So 20 years ago, everybody was saying M-Pesa. Each country is going to be an M-Pesa country. But we are very far from that. So why, do you have I have some views on that, but I would be curious to hear your views.
There's a heavy competition first between Orange Money, MTN Money, M-Pesa, and well, there's 171 different wallets now in Africa. Um, so there's, it's difficult to enter the market, as Wave realized that, very well as a shareholder of Wave.
Yes, we are very happy with this investment.
No, we are very good partners of Wave, and we love Wave, but they have like completely changed the market in Senegal and then entered other markets, and well, it's a competition of heavy players. So everybody's pouring a lot of money, and then it's all about the distribution network. So at some point, it's also superhuman. You need to convince people on the ground everywhere, like 30,000 people in one country, to work for you at for small commissions every day and to transfer cash into your wallet. So it's not easy for a Kenyan company to go everywhere in Africa with the same culture. I mean, it's not the same culture, same language, the regulation and everything. So I think that's why you haven't seen the M-Pesa brand, but the M-Pesa concept now is everywhere. The fact that you have mobile money, and now it's switching from peer-to-peer transfers to payment and remittance, which is really what it should be. So, and Wave, by the way, reduced a lot of prices of mobile money in West Africa, which is really a good thing, because it pushes the whole industry to well, basically to evolve, and that's a good thing.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe same question for you, Henri. How do you see the insurtech is lagging behind if we compare to other vertical like payment, lending. Insurtech is, yeah, even the funding that goes there, I think it's a bit linked to the industry, which is a very conservative one in my view. So tell us a bit, how do you see this sector in the case of Africa? Even globally, it's behind the whole fintech sector in the payment vertical. How do you see the evolution, and especially for a company like Curacell?
Yeah. So I think it's pretty natural that like it's conservative. They manage risk. Yeah, it comes with the personality.
I think
yeah,
the nature of the industry.
yeah. Like if the insurer was like very quick, moving very quickly, adopting everything, I'd wonder if you should give them your money. Yeah. So yeah, it comes with the industry, and it's the same thing everywhere in the world. It's generally like more conservative. Because they're in the business of managing risk, so they need to make sure that whatever innovation it is has come to stay. They need to make sure that whoever company or partner that they're working with is going to be there for a while, which is something I was saying to you earlier, right? So again, a lot of the insurers we work with, we work with a few big brands now, but we weren't able to do that in the first 1 or 2 years because they want to make sure that you're there, and so on and so forth. In terms of my insights around how the industry is evolving, again, I shared this earlier. I think the industry is generally, it's moving in a positive light. Innovation or capital, capital goes where, investors feel like there's an opportunity, and then innovation typically follows that capital. So historically speaking, on the continent, there hasn't been a lot of capital allocated to that sector. And thanks to the boom of the past 2 years, there's been some allocated capital, and we're seeing some changes. We're seeing some massive changes. Before companies like ours, big insurance companies on the continent would typically buy software. The vendors would be American or European or even Asian. But we know a few big insurance companies. We work with AXA, we work with Jubilee, we work with Old Mutual, and some of those guys, some of the tools they were using before us were not African. So I think the landscape is moving, and it's definitely moving in the right direction. And as companies like ours, and we are not the ones who've raised the biggest money. There are companies who raise the biggest money in the space. And as these companies progress, we think that two things will happen. We think that what is already happening, the big insurance companies would stop spending their millions of dollars on the European companies and spending on vendors on the continent, and that will increase the revenue of insurtechs, and investors will invest more and will inspire more people, and so on and so forth. Another thing that I see would happen as well would be just the same way like in some countries regulation has gotten easier, and that has helped drive adoption and how it works. We talked about Nigeria being a bit progressive on the fintech side. And as a result of those regulations, spurred out a lot of successful, the Followwave and the Paystack and the T-Maps, who are some of the biggest fintechs on the continent. So we also see some opportunity for better regulation on insurance that would drive some penetration. I think in the last 2 years we've seen, at least in Nigeria, it's one of our big markets. We've seen like regulations in insurance. I think last year we passed the mandatory health insurance scheme, and obviously that would drive a lot of penetration. Again, one of the underlining issues with insurance and the opportunity on the continent is cost, right? And we are generally a poor continent, right, where people are still emerging.
When you say cost, you mean affordability?
Yes, being able to afford. So historically speaking, why the penetration is where it is like it's generally a very emerging continent. People, insurance has been seen historically speaking as something the rich afford, and because the models were copied from like Europe and in the West, it also came with the same sort of like purchasing power. It's middle class, it's sold to the formal economy, and so on and so forth. So we're starting to see people get innovative around product design. So there's micro insurance. It's literally a thing the same way you have mobile money only in Africa for the first time. Now it's being exported as the same way you have micro insurance, which is insurance products that are micro. Again, obviously, I think you have it in Asia. You know way more about Asia than I do, but I suspect that, because leftly, I suspect that, a lot of those innovations started in Africa and started spreading. So for me, I see those two opportunities, the companies getting bigger and then driving more innovation, and then the regulation following.
Thanks a lot. So, quick question, guys, more on a horizontal basis. I mean, artificial intelligence, that's something everybody is talking about. That's the new buzzword of the moment for now. I mean, there are many buzzwords, but this one is quite intense these days. So I'm curious even to hear your view on that one, but maybe it's less relevant for you, Aurélien. But for you, Henri, I think it's going to disrupt a lot the insurance industry. So I know it's a very vague and broad topic, but give us a sense of how do you think it will affect you?
Yeah.
And same for you, Aurélien. I mean, if you have any views on that, on the payment side, but maybe it's more on the credit scoring side and less on the,
Yeah. So no, I think a lot of executives, and obviously maybe not the startups, but like I think a lot of the very established companies are really scared. I think maybe it's come down a tiny bit, but like I think a month ago or 2 months ago is like every executive is trying to understand how AI would change, the game. And so for us, we've always been very excited about artificial intelligence. Our first product as a company was an AI-powered claims processing and fraud detection solution for insurance companies. So we've been doing AI for years. So we're not one of the new guys who just jumped in because it's sexy. We've been around on it for a few years. So we think that it's exciting now that that it's become sort of like a fad. It's become a buzzword, and a lot of executives and some of our partners or prospective partners are now willing to engage, just because it's noisy and everybody's asking, oh, what's your strategy? What's the AI? And so I think recently we're currently talking to some of the biggest insurers in the GCC region, and they reached out to us because they wanted to explore that solution. So for how it will affect our business, I think it would help us to accelerate. We have executives from some of the biggest insurance companies either coming directly or through like accelerator programs like Plug and Play, or through consultants, innovation consultants saying, hey, how can we use this within our business? How can we grow? What would change within the industry? And I think that's very exciting. One reason I think is very exciting, and I said this in an earlier panel, is because the opportunity for artificial intelligence is to drive down costs for insurance. And right now, one of the reasons, is not the key reason, but one of the reasons insurance isn't as penetrated as it would be is the cost of distribution, right? And so we think that AI can change this, because if you come to a database, let's say a bank, and you plug in people's data, it should be able to predictively say who should get what product. So instead of selling the same product to everybody, you can intelligently recommend products based on people's needs, what kind of transactions they're doing. And more importantly, which is where we play at the moment, is being able to drive down the cost of running a business, whether that's processing a claim, whether that's detecting fraud and keeping your costs low. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
What about you, Redia?
So in the payment industry, if we take it globally, there's many things that we're doing right now. One is helping a lot of merchants digitize the transactions. So what they were doing like for centuries is accept cash, which doesn't really help any lending company to get confidence on the profile of the company. So when we're digitizing all the transactions, now of course microfinance companies and banks and new players as well are asking how they can use our data to improve credit scoring. So of course, right now we're not even using AI, but we will dig into that probably next year. First thing is really to make sure that your database is big enough and really structured enough. And Aliou, our CTO there, is smiling because he knows the amazing job we have to do on this. And then you have massive amount of data that you can basically feed into the AI to deliver interesting stuff. But I mean, the underlying structure for every AI is to have massive amount of data. So we're really focusing on that now.
So you're preparing that already. You say, okay, I have this massive amount of data. I'm going to be able to see what people are selling, buying, and then you're accumulating that, because at the end of the game, it's an accumulation of data.
Yeah. And you look at the players. I mean, the beauty of our infrastructure is that we have all the payment methods together. So we'll be the one centralizing the biggest amount of information from a B2B point of view. And then whether we do it ourselves or whether we do it with multiple financing companies, that's a matter of strategy, but clearly we're going this way. And the other way we see AI as a powerful tool is that when it comes to KYC and compliance, you have millions of companies who are, kind of the informal sector, and okay, so we have to reinvent collectively how we assess those companies with data that is not standard and or standardized. So only AI at some point, which is, if it's well trained, can really help improve the knowledge of those companies. And again, it's tied to credit scoring. So. Yeah, even for fraud, if you want to fight fraud, especially on cards.
On lending, and even on lending.
Yeah.
Any fintech lenders you will discuss with, one of their key issues is fraud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a couple of things on which AI is going to be clearly a pillar of the strategy. But again, first thing is making sure you have the proper data, well structured and big enough.
Fair enough. So, guys, changing a bit topic. I mean, we know 2003, I mean, it depends which country you are, but let's say end of 2022, 2003 have been quite difficult for fundraising. Us, on the investor side, we see a lot of companies doing convertible notes. They do convertible note 1, convertible note 2, and usually that's not a good sign, and they do a lot of internal rounds because nobody wants to go back to the reality that, there was a period where you have a lot of money all over the place. Valuation were extremely high. I think Africa was better than Asia. As discussed, I was based in Asia where the valuation were just insane. And when I joined Africa a few months ago, I finally met some companies which were profitable. So tell us a bit, how do you see the fundraising? Not necessarily with your companies, but you're connected with a lot of founders. Do you think the winter is over? Do you think we have not even started it? What is your gut feeling? Because a lot of funds have a lot of dry power. They need to deploy their money. But at the same time, valuation might need to adjust. And again, it depends on the businesses. So your gut feeling on the fundraising, the mood, and your expectation in the next 12 months?
Yeah, big topic right now, of course, for everyone in the industry. So it's interesting. As a French guy, I know a lot of French entrepreneurs who in 2020, 2021 were raising like crazy. And I was like, hey, bam, 20 million, whoop, you know.
It was open bar.
like the seed round was raising at 5 million, 10 million. Oh, I did a seed at 15 million. I was like, okay. And then I tried to raise my Series A. I started the journey, I think early 2021, and I pitched Africa, and I was like, no man's land. Everybody was like, oh, Francophone Africa, yeah. I wasn't
Even
pitching
more
Nigeria.
difficult.
Nigeria is.
Yeah, we know Henri is a bit spoiled in Nigeria.
You've got the American money behind, so it does help. I mean, again, French VCs keep on waking up because some of you guys are investing, but it's really not enough at all. And it was really hard actually for us. So it took me, I think, a year and a half, and thanks to Africa Invest, thank you, Omar, he's there. We were able to raise. As well as we see Stars Capital Venture and Adeli. So, I mean, at some point, the only people who really believed in the company were people who know Africa. The other guys had no clue. I think now it's changed because there's more and more investors who look at Africa, travel there, spend some time, meet the founders, and understand that the economics are strong. I mean, the demography is kind of doubling. So first thing is like, hey, this is the... Of course, you need to go to Africa. Then every company there is solving a huge issue. I remember some VIVATECH editions where there are some companies who were raising a lot of money on, gadgets. So we don't have that luxury in Africa. No one is gonna buy your gadgets. So you make sure that you build a company with few money and a real issue that you're solving. And so the fact is that we've been taught to build a company with few money. So we have really good way of managing cash. And that I think the whole VC industry and private equity is discovering that more and more. And I think it's sound from the industry. So I expect a shift of money going steadily to Africa. At which pace, I don't know, of course, no one knows. But honestly, there's 2%, I think, or 1% of the whole VC funding which goes to Africa. And soon it's going to be half of the worldwide population. So there's something really crazy here. And I think we'll see massive amount of money pouring to Africa, but it's going to, again, take a bit of time. For 2023, I know a lot of people trying to raise, and everybody says difficult, clearly.
You get, this is the perception, but you hear that from people.
Yeah,
it's true.
Everybody say that, really. And I understand that VCs try to calm down the bubble because in Europe it was crazy, or in Asia, or in the US, but in Africa it wasn't. So don't slow down, accelerate,
Yeah, for sure.
We know Nigeria is different.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very difficult. So I'd raised money so the first time I tried to raise money, I couldn't raise. We failed. So I've raised when I couldn't raise. I've raised before the Paystack exit because that's when it got easier for the continent. It didn't get easier till after 2022. But very similar to what you said, I was talking to an American investor who was black, who's investing in us, and then they were like, people are complaining that the money has come down, but it was never really big in Africa, right? So what's the? So we know how to manage. We're frugal, where people are not built to just like splurge money, and so on and so forth. So I agree with you. I think that there's way more discipline around allocating capital for executives on the continent. It did get crazy for sure, but not as crazy as everywhere else. But from what I hear, obviously, like I said, we raised last year as well. It was very easy. It was the easiest money I ever raised. So you
continue to be spoiled.
So we've seen being quite easy, but it's not. It's easy. But I spoke to 150 investors, but it was
Okay, so you did a big job.
So it was easy, but I spoke to 150 investors. So over a period of like 2 months. So it's but I consider that easy because at least you succeeded. We raised the capital. So so our bar of what is easy and what is hard is slightly hard. But I think the ecosystem where it is, there's definitely way more conservatism around allocating capital, even if there is, like you said, dry powder. But a lot of what we did see was that there were a lot of American capital, foreign capital, tourist capital, as you would say, in the last 2 years. And now they've gone back to their core mandate, which is whatever regions. And so now we're left with the PEs and then a few core African funds. But one thing that we have seen is that great businesses, great economics still raise capital, not at crazy valuations, but you still, and again, it's a wave, right? Like it will go up, it will come down, it go up again. So I think it's gone back to the basics where people can focus and build like real business. And then if it comes again, then you can get that uptick. If it comes in our lifetime as founders, because the last time it crashed was in 2008. So it probably will go up again. It was a 13-year bull run. So let's see when it recovers and when it goes up. For what's happening in 2023, I also know, so one of the reasons it was very easy for us was like we went through YC, where YC company, it does make it easier. It's basically a fundraising program, right? So we have seen other founders as well who've gone through the same program also struggle to raise right now. So people are everywhere in the world, and this is not an African thing. It's literally everywhere in the world. Like American founders, I think we've had less African companies shutting down actually, but like every other day I see like an American company shutting down. They raise like a ton of money, and obviously what we've seen is like it gets worse at like later stages. Obviously our next round is
because everybody's waiting.
So we know that it'll be difficult for us. We're not raising now, but in the next couple of months we will raise. So we don't expect it to be as easy as the last. But that's why we try to work hard on the business so that,
Okay. So thanks to both of you. I mean, we wish you good luck. IFC will continue to follow you closely, as you know. And thanks a lot for this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks for watching us. Thank you.
Thank you to the three of you, and thank you everyone for attending all of our sessions today at the Africa Tech Lab. We will be back tomorrow for more conversations around innovation and tech in Africa, namely around digital transformation. Thank you.